Today on the Onward podcast, we have Steve Martinez. He's the president and owner of Tradewinds. It's a very great home builder here in Idaho. He has been in the construction industry for 27 years, 24 of those as owner of Tradewinds. Steve is also very involved in all things leadership here in the Valley along housing. He has just finished as the chairman of the Federal Government Affairs Committee for the National Home Builders Association. He spends a lot of time in Washington, D.C. and in the State House affecting all things that are legislative around housing and home building in Idaho. It's going to be great to get caught up with him on all things housing in the Treasure Valley. Steve, man, this is great.
Hey.
We're trying to catch up here.
I know.
I've known you forever, but we haven't seen each other for a long time. Well, we've been wanting to have you on for a while. You've been in the building industry a long time.
I kind of was born into it. Yeah, I didn't have a choice.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
How's your dad?
He's doing awesome. You know, it's kind of funny. I bought him out in 2006.
Yeah.
And he was retired for about 30 seconds.
and
then he came back to work and, you know, he would go long enough to where I'd get a call from my mom. She'd say, "Hey, you got to send him home. You're just working him to death." I'd say, "All right." So I'd send him home. And
that guy's built one way, though.
Pretty soon she'd call and she'd say, "You got to get him out of the house. He's driving me nuts. You know, put him on a job site." And so it really was, he turned 79 this year.
Is he 79?
And
there's no way.
Yeah. And it really was about last year where he said, "All right, I need to get off the job."
He's 79.
Yeah. And he's just...
He does not look 79.
No. And doesn't act 79.
Yeah, doesn't act 79.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why. I just didn't. I did not expect that. I expected like 70.
Yeah. No. I mean, he still goes 100 miles an hour.
And how's your mom?
So doing well? She's doing awesome. They're doing
well.
Great.
You've had so talk a little. I do want to get into some other stuff because I wanted to talk industry, the housing industry,
Absolutely.
The Valley, all that stuff. But I do just background. Pretty cool to grow up with him and you getting right into it and then kind of buying him out early.
Yeah.
I mean, you've owned the company now
I was 26 when I bought him
26 when you bought him out.
I don't know how many people, especially in today's day and age of just looking at the youth and where they're at.
And that was pre-Great Recession.
Absolutely. So, you know, at 27, that was 2006. So 2007, I was like, man, I am king of the world. I'm going to do this 5 more years and I'm done. And then I got my master's in building essentially in 2008 because it was 4 years of just grind.
Is it for, like Steve, you're young, but like for guys that, there's a lot of people that don't remember it.
Right.
Or don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us that went through it, it just feels like it wasn't that long ago in a lot of ways. And it feels like it didn't even happen in some ways.
It's interesting. Just this year, my PTSD of 08 is slowly going away. And it's interesting because I remember, I think it was in 08 or 09, my dad said, "This is the best thing that could have happened to you." And when you're going through it, all you want to do is slap the person that says that.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, he started the company in 1980. So probably the second worst time to be in business. You know, interest rates were crazy. I mean, I remember we were taking trades for work. I mean, he would come home with a motorcycle or a piano or a clock. I mean, just he would bring stuff home and my mom would just shake her head like, "What are we doing?" And that's just, you just traded for work then. So looking back, it absolutely was the best thing that could have happened to me at a young age because I saw so many guys
you tend
close to retirement
you tend to
who
plan,
lost it all.
Once you go through it, and I've tried to explain this, it was so bad. And there were really just, you'd like, I don't know the way out of this thing.
Yeah.
So much of it was not in your control, everything. And then you kind of figure out a pathway and you find your way through it. You're like, I don't ever want that to happen again. So what do you find yourself doing? At least me, everything we do is like, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? And sometimes drives people crazy. You're like, well, that's not going to happen.
And
you're like,
no, the wave eventually crashes. And that was one thing. And what's sad is it's kept me from a lot of opportunity, but it's also kept my neck off the chopping block when there's been corrections. And, you know, I always say that was kind of a once in a lifetime event. And yet COVID
then you had
was another
once in a lifetime event.
And so these once in a lifetime events, I'm kind of getting over. Like, but I feel like I've run my business like 2008 is around the corner. And it's kept me
So let's talk. Well, I'm going to jump a little bit all over here, but before we leave your dad, because I do want to get into like all the questions, because it will be good for people listening to get the Steve Martinez experience of housing and where we're at, and where we're headed, and all those things. I think that's tremendously valuable. But before we leave your dad, incredible guy, like.
I will tell you this: having him at the helm, whether it's in business, in my personal life, I mean, that's really what has saved me in business. He was reining me in 06 and 07, when I wanted to conquer the world, saying, ease up, this doesn't last forever. You got to, take it in stride. And then in 08, when it was the darkest hour in 09 and 10, 11, 12, he was right there alongside of me, coaching me through all that. And I think that's in life, having a coach, having somebody on, next to you. There was a lot of people that didn't have that, and struggled alone. And not to, make my experience any better or any worse, but having him, attached at the hip, couldn't have been a better situation.
What are some of the qualities that make him? He's a unique guy. What are some of the qualities that you admire in Ted?
It's funny. He said, never take a risk with your reputation. And that is something that's always stuck with me. This town is so small, and he was born and raised here. He came from very, very humble beginnings. My grandma worked the fields, from all across the country, from Michigan all the way to California, depending on what was in season. The home that he grew up in, the home that we grew up in, I mean, it just very humble beginnings. And I think that's always stuck with him. He's never gotten too big for his britches. He's always helping people to a fault, where as kids, we were always annoyed, like, Dad, quit doing that, enough. Or, this person's driving us nuts. Why do you keep giving them a chance? He's probably started more businesses in this valley for people, getting them on their feet. When guys go out on their own and teaching them how to run business, and they may be a great framer but a terrible business person, and so he's helped get them through that. So he's always quietly been helping people, and I love it. It's something that growing up that way as a kid, you don't appreciate it until you get to a point and you see how many people he's helped throughout the process.
Thanks for sharing that. I think doing this as long as we have now, I love hearing a little bit what's behind successful people. And usually there's someone that's super influential that has said, hey, and when it's your father, it's even better, right?
Well, and you and I have seen there are a lot of successful people in this valley, and there are people you want to be like, and there are definitely people you don't. And everywhere in between. And so that's, I think, the clientele that I work with, I get to see all types, and I get to see the qualities of people that you want to emulate. And I think that's my dad to a T.
Well, I wanted to hit that for sure with you today, because he's made an impact on me. He's just been a great example, and for you, a legacy, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, so let's get into it. So then we get through, the valley here. If you go back to, because to me, it's kind of this really important kind of date for me. Like it happened, and then you get to 12, and it's a little better.
Starting to
crawl out. Never really easy though for a while, because it took a while, and then it seems like, then the coasts are going nuts. Just going nuts. They've lost their minds.
Well, I joke. I say the cows are coming home. So California, Oregon, and Washington, the cows are coming home. And that really was, and we've always had that migration. So this isn't a new thing, but it's almost like someone poured gas on the fire, and it just exploded.
And it went from Idaho, Boise to everywhere you went. Like, oh, that's the place, right? And then let's talk about why, because I think for people, like, they want to shut it off now, which is an interesting concept. But if you look at why people are attracted to here, it's why we're attracted to here. It's an incredible place to raise your family. You look at the beauty. Look at the spring day we're in today.
Absolutely.
There's just nothing, the outdoors things, and how clean and safe, and the politics, quality of life. I mean,
really
it's just something with schools. You start going down the list, it's a great place to come. That was discovered. I had to I looked up something for someone the other day, and I just looked at home values of homes, and I was shocked like
just
blown away
Yeah.
what happened. And it was probably like, it was probably 13, 14, 15. It still was probably okay. And then it just took off.
It did. And part of that, it was supply and demand. We got caught flat-footed.
Yeah.
And I know that the answer always seems build more. But when you have a large amount of people coming into an area, and I saw it actually in the recession in North Dakota, when the oil got not discovered, but when fracking became a big deal, and everybody and their dog came into North Dakota, it pushed all the local people out, and it pushed pricing so high, rent so high, cost of living, and I kind of joke because I'm usually one of the first contacts of people coming into the state, and they get here and they say, well, this isn't any cheaper than where I came from.
Yeah.
Like I thought I was getting a deal, and I have to explain to them that if you're coming here for the deal, that's probably not.
Those days are over.
Now. But there's 10,000 other reasons why you should be coming. And so I also have to kind of mellow people out where they come in and they're, coming for, let's say, political reasons. And we're going to save, the state from itself. And I say, well, relax, and we're actually pretty middle of the road in Idaho. And it's interesting. I had a client one time that, sent me their ballot, their sample ballot, and marked who they thought that we would love to vote for. And I said, oh, we're in the weeds here. And they said, what? No, we're saving you. We're helping.
Yeah.
And I kind of explained it. And she said, well, you don't understand, coming from where we're coming from, you have to be goofy left or goofy right to hopefully end up in the middle. And I said, Idaho's about as middle as it comes.
Yeah.
I said, we tend to ebb and flow on that line. And so you don't have to get goofy right to save, the state from itself.
Yeah,
so.
you don't. And let's talk a little bit about that. You've become pretty politically involved. I mean, nationally, you've been part of the national organizations. You've been one of the leaders of the home building industry here in the state. So I do want to dive a little deeper on that, because it's been an interesting. It sounds too easy to be supply and demand, but we did get caught flat-footed.
We did.
We really did.
Yeah.
And then I would love to hear your perspective on. Okay, now jump forward another 10 years from that. We have COVID in the middle of that.
Right.
Which I think if COVID didn't happen or did happen, because
could have
then it
been
was
on
another
Yeah.
wave of people that came in, because now you had COVID, I could live anywhere. Well, I'm going to Idaho. Have you heard about Idaho?
And here's the difference too, is COVID brought in a group of people that might not have looked at Idaho before. So, there was a quality of life component of a migration. And then I feel like COVID brought a political component where all of a sudden people didn't like the way that government was reacting to COVID. So one issue. And so they said, we got to get out of here, no matter what. And so I think it brought in a wave of a different mentality to the state.
Yeah.
We've had it so good for so long in Idaho that politically we've been on autopilot.
Yeah.
Our candidates, our elected officials haven't been goofy. We've probably always had goofy, but they haven't been far right, far left, just middle of the road, common sense.
Business friendly.
Just business friendly.
Capitalism.
Yeah. They realize small business friendly.
Small business friendly.
Yes.
And I
So
think
there's
that's
some
really
difference
important.
there. And so we've had it too good, too long. And what I realized a few years back was that pretty soon we were getting hijacked at every level. And I don't care, for a while it was like, well, we're going to just go after, things that really affect us. And now it was like, we got to be looking at school boards, and we got to be looking at, HOA presidents, joking, but we got to look at across the spectrum, because it really is, there's an anti-growth sentiment. There's, I'm surprised when I go to a city council meeting at how many people willingly say, well, when I moved here last month, this isn't what I moved here for, and we need to stop the growth. And it's like, you can't stop the growth. And if you stop the growth, all you do is raise the prices.
So I want you to help me explain this, because if you spend time around the country and you look at communities that have kind of wrecked themselves, it is regulation that wrecks themselves.
Right, 100%.
Because, and that comes in weird ways, because you have the kind of NIMBYism that causes regulation. You have, whatever reason, overreach from government causing regulation. There's a lot of regulation comes in different forms, right?
It's death by 1,000 cuts.
Yes. So you have all these different things trying to say, no, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like that. And pretty soon you've narrowed down the free market system that provides options for people, which I wish people could understand that just drives up costs.
Yeah. I had this discussion with an elected official that was really going around the county and actually other counties to try to stop growth. And I met with this person. I said, hey, let's be part of the solution. Yeah. Instead of just close the border, lock the door, let's figure out a way to make this work and take all the credit, bring everybody together. It's not about that, but let's find a way to find a path forward. And they said, well, the problem is all my constituents are coming to me and they're complaining about property taxes and their values are going up and their values are going up and we've got to slow this down. I said, okay, I get that component. But I said, it's Econ 101. It's not my major, so I'm not even going to pretend that I'm an econ major. But I said, Econ 101 says that we restrict the supply, but we still have the demand. I said, if they're mad this year, I said, if you stop all building, which they wouldn't, but if you stopped all building, where do you think prices are going to be in a year from now with the same amount of people coming in? Now, no local people will be able to buy, and we will be 100% reliant on out-of-state people to come in and make this market work. So they didn't understand it. They could. They didn't want to admit that.
It's in a complex problem, whatever the problem is, infrastructure, housing, homelessness. Pick the big, hairy ones that are just hard. It's easy to have like the quick, hey, just do this, just do that, fix that. It's this person's fault. And it's never that easy.
There's no silver bullet.
There's no silver bullet, and it's going to require a bunch of stuff. Can you get into, because one of the things I know you're very well versed in is it's also having lots of housing options.
Correct.
Because talk a little bit about that.
So a couple of things. I don't build affordable housing. And I'll be the first to say it. Like nothing of the caliber of home that we build is affordable. And yet I am out advocating on behalf of affordable housing at every level. And I get really annoyed when I get labeled a special interest in certain settings because special interest is getting something that I benefit from. I don't benefit from more affordable housing. I've testified in front of Congress and been grilled on that. I've testified at the state level with with the legislature on this. I also think we have to educate people that their first time home, you and I's first time home was, quarter acre lot, white picket fence, dog, and a single family. I think what we're trying to tell people now and re-educate people is that first time home may be a condo, it may be a townhome, it may be a different product. We have to have a multitude of products now because that product that you and I had as the first time home doesn't exist at the price point that we can afford.
And let's talk about there's lots of factors that have made that true. Price of land
absolutely
has gone through the roof is one thing. Supply chain. Those things never, they loosened up, but the pricing.
They never go backwards.
They never go backwards. So people don't understand, there was the supply chain crunch, and they're like, oh, is it better? Yeah, it's better, but the pricing never changed.
Correct. And an economist will tell you don't want it to go down.
Correct.
Because that's deflation. And that's a negative impact to the economy. So we all want gas to go down. Yeah. We all want healthcare pricing to go down. But we don't want whatever we do for a living to go down.
Right.
And so I think we have to be a little careful. The goal is to stay, at a constant growth and not like we've had in the last.
But when that supply chain thing happened, that did happen, and there was times where you couldn't get wiring,
throw a
you
dart,
couldn't get switched,
no
matter what it was, you couldn't get it. But it seems to be better now. But pricing stayed there, and then you've got labor.
Correct.
And you've got a retiring skilled labor, electricians, plumbers, HVAC, skilled tradesmen of all trades are retiring just because of demographics. It has nothing to do with, it's just pure demographics. They're aging out.
The hard part is, so the Great Recession took a huge segment of the working population that was either close to retirement, that just said, hey, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? I'm losing money. I'm out. It also took the bottom segment. So I grew up framing houses in high school all through college. It took away the segment that would have come into the market in high school or in college or at that age, that there just weren't the jobs. And so now all of a sudden you've got two missing segments of the labor market. Now fast forward 10 years, 20 years, all of a sudden we're starting to see that segment. And for everybody that is retiring now, we don't, let's say for, 20 people that are retiring today, and I don't know the numbers off the head, we have like 4 people replacing them.
I think that's very similar to what I've heard.
Yeah.
So all those factors, land, cost of building materials, and labor are not, that's not changing anytime soon here. So now you say, okay, well, what is the product type? It's going to need to be
absolutely
a very varying type of product.
And sadly, and this is what most people don't want to hear, you need density to get there. You have to get density.
And so then let's talk about this. So multifamily, I do know, like I've heard like just wild swings in city councils around the valley of, hey, we have enough. And then you talk to someone like Clay Anderson, who's a multifamily expert. He's like, dude, let's not.
Yeah, we're about 10,000 units behind in the valley.
So just multifamily. So apartments. Let's keep it just apartments in the valley. We're 10,000 behind. And because of the interest rate spike that just happened, everything froze. So what happened is there was kind of a lot of apartments, and then you saw some concessions, you saw rents coming down, and now that's going back up, but there have not been any new starts.
Correct.
Because of just the way they start.
And municipalities talk the talk.
Yes.
So when I meet with the municipality, my question is, the heck with affordable housing, the heck with attainable housing, two different numbers, the heck with can your own employees afford to live in your city? And the answer most of the time is no. And so I bring that up because I think there's a negative connotation with affordable housing. There's actually zero studies that have shown that when an affordable project comes in, that there's a negative impact to a community. There's a mental side of things. But
so can we talk a little bit more about that? Because I think this is this is one of the main reasons I'm really excited to have you on. So you've got market rate apartments. We're 10,000 short on now. Well, let's talk about the different kinds of affordable housing. So there are just programs out there which will allow some subsidy to go into. And one of the guys, we got to have him on here, but Caleb Roop with Pacific Companies, probably the largest in largest in the United States of America, out of Eagle, Idaho, who's done a lot of this stuff here. But those, you look at the projects he's done here, they're some of the nicest quality projects ever, and no one here is saying that diminished the quality of the neighborhood or anything. It just gives options for people, and it's using mostly tax credits is what it is. And he's, these companies like Caleb's are just experts at saying, hey, it's a community. It's certainly like it's part of his DNA of saying, hey, I am doing this because one, it's good for people, it's good for communities, and it's a niche that he's filled. So you got those. So you got, this kind of housing, the apartments, and then let's talk about, you got condos. There's a lot of challenge with condos. We're doing a big project right now downtown. So people don't realize this. They're like, why don't we have more condo options? Well, what happened was there was a lot of condos that were built, and then attorneys found out, with a condo unit, there's just fraught with potential problems because you got all these units that people own next to other units people own. So they literally...
The legality of a condo, it would blow your mind.
People don't understand that. And it's state by state.
And as a contractor... I just was with a tile contractor out of Oregon. He said, we are in a lawsuit 24/7 on condo projects. And
so there are law firms in the country who literally the second you do a condo project will sue you. They'll file a lawsuit even though they don't have anything yet because they know that they can go through this and find their,
there's something.
There's ambulance chasers in medicine. There are attorneys that chase condo projects. So it's why we don't have a lot of them. We're doing one. If there's 69 units in downtown building, you get insurance for it. It's quadruple what insurance would be if it was multifamily. You just
raise the cost.
You raise the cost of everything for condos. But they do provide. I think our units in downtown, it provides density. You think about single family homes and what they cost in that end of town.
Correct.
I mean, you could never own a single family home for that. And now you're in a highly amenitized building in a great neighborhood that's going to be it's still not affordable.
Correct.
It's
I'm really careful when I say that.
Yeah.
Because I think that affordable to you and I and to somebody else, it's all different.
I think what you could say is a segment of the population will be able to buy them.
Yeah, correct.
They're not affordable, but they're less money than a single family home.
Correct.
So there you got.
And they're in a part of town that you couldn't get otherwise.
And it's right next. By the way, St. Luke's is spending $1 billion on their expansion. And you've got, now we're going to talk about this later too, you got infrastructure issues. Because now if you're living in Middleton to work at St. Luke's downtown, or you're living in Cuna, I mean, it provides some options for, and they've got a range of employees all the way from physicians, mid-levels, nurses, top to bottom, and it provides some housing options. So then you go to townhomes. I do think townhomes or starter homes, that's going to be a segment of the market.
Now here's the interesting thing. So I did a project in downtown Boise that was townhomes, and I did the exact same building in Meridian that was apartments. And here's the difference. The townhomes have, and you know this, but for anybody listening, a townhome has an individual lot line.
Yep.
Now, if I go to a jurisdiction to do if I'm looking at path of least resistance, if I'm looking at the time value of money, if I'm looking at the uncertainty with tariffs and labor and all the price increases, I'm going to go the path of least resistance, which is apartments, which doesn't allow for home ownership. Because if I have to go into a project and individually put a lot line on that, subdivide that same piece of property that I could just put the same building, same units. So
it's a great example where policy at the city level will drive behavior.
Creates the barrier.
If they could make it, and then they would realize that same person could now be getting equity in a
100%.
thing. So there needs to be, and instead you get the opposite. I think what's happened, and I like our jurisdictions, but if you go back to regulation 10, 20 years ago and regulation now, we're headed the wrong direction.
And here's the funny thing. I'm not that old. I mean, I've been doing this my whole life, but I'm not 80 years old. I'm not 79 years old and can talk about the good old days. I used to be able to walk into Boise with a set of plans, sit with a planner for an hour, and walk out with a permit, same day. I don't want to tell you how much time it takes now.
Let's talk about it. 'Cause I think this is important because it is part of the problem.
Absolutely. So now that same permit can take 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Minimum. You add a layer of hillside or, in a overlay district or something, a historical district. It's months and months of uncertainty. And the checklist to get an approval now is so high, is so long.
And all that gets passed on.
It gets passed on. And I've sat in so many meetings where people say, it's only $200 or it's only this. And I'm like, you're right. But I've had 100 meetings of it's only $200. And I get, government says, well, that's not going to be the tipping point. That's not going to, well, in this valley, we've done a study. For every $1,000 you raise the price of a house, 900 people can no longer afford it. Doesn't mean there's 900 buyers just sitting waiting to buy. It just means that based on the median income, that they can no longer afford that home. So that's $1,000.
Do you think this is across the whole valley because that's where we work? But do you think that? And I think that for the most part, we have local governments that are in tune with business. But I would ask the next question: do you think they realize how different it is and how onerous it is? And there's been some crazy things. Building code keeps the other thing. Some of it's out of their control. So there's several factors against us. You have building codes, international building codes. So these things change, and then the different cities adopt different
versions.
things. And when that happens, crazy things happen.
The hard part is that even when you come with a common sense approach, so I'm going to back up for a minute on just getting into approval on a apartment or a townhome project. I've brought up, and it's not a new idea, it's not my idea, but I brought up the fact that, hey, if I add an affordable component to this project, put it at the top of the stack. Guarantee me approval in 90 days, and I'll do more of these. The last project I did, downtown Boise, it took me 3 years for 30 units. When I started the project, it was 44 units, got weeded down to 30 units. increased the amenities. And then at my final hearing, a councilwoman asked me, so how many of these units are going to be affordable? I said, well, it's 3 years. Prices have done this. Interest rates have done this. My amenities went up. You reduced my density. You cost me over $5 million in the project. 0 units will be affordable.
But does that connect? Do you think there's?
That's where I say they walk the walk.
I think they walk. I wish that, because it's going to be a problem. One of the reasons that I really want to have you on is you every single person I talk to now about almost anything, pick the issue, it's housing.
And the beauty is it's at the national level.
It's national.
It's at the state level. It's at the local level.
And the hotter we get, the more Micron does with all the.
100%.
This is not shutting off. No matter what they say, that's not shutting off, and no matter what they legislate at the local or state level, people are coming here, and it's only going to drive up prices.
Correct.
What really needs to happen, but I have no idea how you do this, is how do you go and convincingly say, let's have a valley-wide kind of plan.
Because the hard part is it's at the local level is where it starts. There's only so much at the federal level.
That's right.
And to your point on codes and some of those things, so we're fighting that fight.
Yeah.
The local level is where most land use decisions come from.
Yeah.
And that's where the layers get tacked on. Right now with the legislature, we're working on getting a working group together. Very political, though. Idaho, the problem is I always joke, the problem with Idaho is it's very conservative. The great thing with Idaho is it's very conservative. And so getting everybody together, having, to your point, a valley-wide conversation, checking your ego at the door and coming in with real-life solutions. My frustration is I'm usually pushed aside. It's like, wait a minute. You want to talk housing. I actually met with the White House about a year ago. And they said, hey, housing's an issue. We're bringing it up to the State of the Union. We want to address this. We want to get this taken care of. We, the experts, the White House, think that in order to get housing more affordable, we need to use more union labor and be building more energy efficient homes. My hand shot up. I couldn't let that comment go. And I thought that's your solve to housing affordability. You pushed us aside and you got your experts together, and that's what you came up with. And that happens at all local, state, national. You're pushing the experts aside, the free experts, the guys that are willing to show up and give you free expert analysis. I build roads for a living. I know how to get it more affordable. I build projects. I want better infrastructure. No one wants crappy schools and a sewer or water plant that's at capacity. That doesn't bode well for a project. Invite the people that do this all day, every day into the room. But
there almost seems to be. I don't think it's malintent. I think it's misunderstanding for sure. And then I think when you're in government, even if you came from private sector, I think you're in that echo chamber of
100%.
We're here to fix things. We're here to fix things. And I think instead of, in medicine, it's do no harm, right?
Right.
One of the Hippocratic Oath. It's right there.
Yeah.
First, do no harm, because there are things you can do that are actually worse than the thing.
Right.
And I think for government, I wish they had the same thing on their wall. It's like, first, do no harm.
Get outside of your people.
Yeah, and ask people, hey, what should we do? Because we got a problem. We've got a problem. And if you look at, listen, we do commercial, right? We do a little bit of residential, but it is getting hard.
One example of that, Tommy, is that we had, the legislature passed a bill, 389, I think it was, last year before, to limit how much local cities could collect through taxes, property taxes. Yeah. What they did was they artificially raised the cost of on all these small cities. Yep. For a big city like Boise and Meridian that grows at a pretty constant rate, they weren't hitting that cap. But for Star, for Middleton, for Kuna, these cities that are seeing a rapid growth, and they capped it. So now, City of Star, for instance, I just pulled a permit. It was almost $20,000.
Do you think they did that on purpose? Well, because here's the deal. Like, if you've got constituents saying, "Hey, stop growth," I don't know the answer to this question. Because one of the ways you could stop growth,
there's always an underlying. If you
make it
gum
so
up
expensive,
the system,
If you truly screw it up so bad that a building permit and STAR is $20,000 and it costs, our median prices for our homes just keep going and going and going and going. There is probably a point. What I don't understand about that is these same people, I can't believe they have families here. They're your neighbors.
These are
they have
local
kids here.
people.
They're local people. You're like, do you not want to
yeah.
have your kids live here? Do you want to not have, because the answer is always going to be free market. The answer is going to be, we need everything.
Right.
We just went through them. We need affordable housing units. We need multifamily. We need townhomes. We need condos.
Yeah.
We need single family starter homes. We need medium range homes. We need the whole thing to make this thing work. And most of the time, I feel like we're battling against a wave that people don't and I think I don't know.
And here's the problem is that we don't have like an organized first-time homeowners group, meaning that when once you buy the house and you're in it, I don't want to say you don't care anymore, but you don't care anymore. You've made your purchase. So there's not like a torches and pitchfork group out there that's advocate. There are some, but there's not an organized group. Once I have my piece, I don't want anybody else to have it.
That's actually a really good point.
And so I think there's a concession of how do we slow growth down until it affects you. But then once your kids have their house, then you don't care anymore.
It's a really good point. And if you have it, then you go to the meeting and say, I don't want any more of this.
And I've seen this at so many city council meetings. The things that if you're ever really bored and you want to watch paint dry, go to a city council meeting and watch the comments.
Well, like our worst one was when we got our downtown building approved. The sheer hypocrisy.
Oh,
the sheer
shocked.
hypocrisy of the testimony. And then the interesting thing, the first time we went through it was multifamily. Okay. And we went back and did deep dives on all the people that testified.
Yeah.
And look, they're all millionaires living next door, and their whole thing was, hey, we don't want these apartment people in our neighborhood. Okay. So then we convert it to condos, drop the number of units. Those same people come back and said, no, we wanted so it's all lies veiled in this.
Oh,
hey, I'm here for.
I had a gal tell us and it was on public testimony. I should go get the recording, but she said, I don't want our kids playing with those kids.
Yeah.
And I was just floored.
Yeah.
And my planner, I'm like about to blow up, and she's like, sit down. And I said, I can't. I said, I have to address that comment. And so I got up, and it wasn't meant to be rude, but I said the average price of these projects will be way more than a house across your street. So I'm sure they don't want their kids playing with your kids.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean it to be.
But the point is, they'll say anything they can.
Well, I couldn't even believe that was it was just hateful. It was, I get that if you're worried about property value, I get that, kind of the typical, conversations out there, but no one complains when their value goes up because of the product and they are able to now sell their home and make more money.
Before, this has been great, but the other thing, so you hear two things and they're in conflict with each other. You hear everybody, legislators, local people talking about property taxes. Everyone what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And you have everyone talk about affordability of housing. Yet at the same time, you have many of those same people supporting and not standing up for the restrictions, the process, when it's so obviously the answer. And I think when you're in those elected positions, maybe I don't know what. Like, is it the heat of the NIMBYism? Is it why? I don't think that it seems clear.
To you and I, because we deal with it all day.
But politically, what I'm trying to say is politically, though, couldn't you say, if you were the mayor, hey, I'm doing this because I'm trying to bring property taxes down, and I'm doing this because I'm trying to make it affordable for your kids and their kids to be here. That seems super compelling.
You have two arguing comments or conversations here. You have price of homes and you have property taxes.
Yeah.
And you're trying to balance the two, right? And then you throw in the third of growth.
Yep.
And everybody's complaining about growth. And really in Idaho, the complaints, traffic and schools. No one complains about this building, the services, the extra Costco that comes in, the Costa Vida, that no one complains about.
Maybe not no one.
Yeah. But the point is,
fewer people.
Yeah. But the point is, it used to take me 5 minutes to get there. Now it takes me 6,
Yeah.
and I've lost it, right? Or the school problem, which is a state problem, not a local. It ends up being a local problem, but it's so there's a lot to unpack there. So are you trying to slow growth down by making it more expensive? But then by making it more expensive, you get higher property taxes, and no one can afford to live in your city. I mean, it's the pendulum swings. And so what's the priority? Is it affordability, or is it anti-growth?
The last thing I think really, because I know you think this way. So I know you do polling, and I know you do research, because I think with your national organizations, I mean, instead of letting like subjective feelings of, well, this is what I feel, this is what I do, it would be so good to objectively look at a lot of things. Like how short are we?
Yeah.
And where are we short? And this idea of infill, right?
Yeah.
I laugh so hard sometimes, because I will be talking to really good people in Boise about some projects just on the periphery of Boise.
Right.
And they're like, we hate sprawl. And I'm like, hey, I know you probably don't go past 16th Street ever.
Right.
We
all live in our bubble.
I know there's this thing past 16th
Yeah.
Street that's called Meridian
Yeah.
and Nampa and Caldwell.
No, that's Eastern Ontario.
It is, but like, that's sprawl.
Yeah. And yet the infill is so hard.
Oh, it's just
that
brutal.
project that took me 3 years, it was on 2 acres, Vista and Overland. Like the prime on the bench, great spot.
Utilities there,
Yes.
infrastructure there.
A community center,
Yeah.
bus stops, like all the things. And yet in 3 years, I could have done 20 projects in Meridian at 100 acres.
But why don't they listen?
So we've even provided the stats. So to your point, not just the fields, we said, hey, what is the true impact of housing from a cost perspective, from a community perspective? Yeah. What does it contribute to the economy? Not only in the first year it's built, but then when you have a family living in it, the ripple effect. How many people are working in, for that home or on that home? And the ripple effect is gigantic. I'll get you a copy of that study. We do it. We actually did it in like 2006 or 7 when things were gangbusters, and we did it in the recession to show the contrast when there was crazy growth and no growth. And then I think we updated that in 16 or 18.
I'm going to switch just because I can't believe we've been going at this for as long as we have. Can you talk a little bit on the tariffs a little bit? Although I think that changes day to day, because I don't know how much of it is going to impact or not. And then kind of what if I made you predict kind of, which is impossible, Steve, just to let you know, it's impossible. What are you kind of thinking with interest rates, specifically on housing, tariffs, how they're going to affect pricing, workforce? I mean, there's just so many different things. But what does 2025 look like the rest of this year and going into 26 for your predictions?
So the tariff discussion is one that I actually think has zero to do with tariffs. Zero. I think it's a tool. Yeah. It's a negotiating tool that you and I are getting caught in the middle of, right? And I think it is, to your point, it changes daily. I was just on a call a few minutes ago. I can't remember, Liberation Day or something, that when we came out and liberated everybody from their equity in the market, is what I call it. But when they announced all the tariffs, they actually came out a few days later and excluded Canada and Mexico on a few things. And that's where a majority of the things that we use in building come from, if we are bringing it from out of the country. China is mostly components, but lumber is the one that is kind of the poster child for when you want to talk tariffs. The tariff discussion, though, even though some of those things are excluded, in my business, your business, we have to plan for them, no matter what. Business doesn't do well with uncertainty. I can't get into a contract with a client at price X when it could be price Y or price Z or wherever. And so I have to plan for those. So I build it into my pricing, which we all then pay for. And a good example, so when COVID was going, was hot off the press and going crazy, for a 4x8 sheet of plywood, it's OSB, but 4x8 sheet of plywood that we use on the entire house, we were paying about $7 a sheet at right before COVID hit. When COVID hit, we were paying $80 to $90 for that same sheet.
Gosh. I remember those days.
So
I didn't know it was that bad.
I had one house that we were building that I had to go to the client and say, you owe us an extra $250,000 for lumber, not for a pool, not for a cool countertop or any upgrade, for the same thing. No one's going to walk into your house and notice any difference. And so my fear with the tariff thing is that we can't get caught.
Yeah.
You know, we got caught flat-footed with COVID. We can't get caught. So I have to build that into the model.
Things are going to, even with the threat, just uncertainty,
yes.
It's going to cost more. So
and I'm seeing it with suppliers.
Everything I'm bidding out right now, it's just going to be more, whether or not they are implemented.
Whether it hits or not.
They're building it into
Correct.
all of our subs.
Correct.
Right?
So there's affordability. And we really push that with this White House, that you made housing a priority, and you've brought it up several times, but this goes in the face of that. And I think that's the Canada-Mexico thing, why it was excluded. But my suppliers are already planning for it, so they've already adjusted their pricing. They've built it into their pricing model, whether it happens or not. So that's the tariff component. Then you have the immigration component.
Yeah.
And this one's really frustrating, and it's near and dear to my heart because I see it every single day with my subs, my suppliers, with the workforce that we have in this valley that is highly reliant on that. About 30% of the labor in construction is non-born, workforce in this country. My frustration with this is that it's a problem that the federal government created.
Yep.
And now we're vilifying an entire group. I always say there's 1% of anything that's bad. 1% of doctors, 1% of builders, 1% of immigrants, 1% of throw a dart. And we're using that as the reason to go after an entire group of people, and it's really frustrating. We've made this group out to be the boogeyman on something that they're not. I have guys coming to me saying, "Hey, I won't even send my people to this jurisdiction or this jurisdiction because there's the threat of being picked up."
Yeah.
Now, we talked about labor shortage. We already have a labor shortage.
Yeah.
We don't have people coming into the trades, and now we're restricting the labor in certain markets. We also always kind of point to like the bottom of the barrel. Oh, that's the cheap labor, and they're taking people's jobs.
It's not true.
I have guys that I know that are their company's making $6 to $10 million a year here illegally, working with an immigration attorney, but job creators. Making great money, paying taxes, paying into a system they will never get a benefit from, not complaining, here for quality of life, building a family, sending their kids to college. So I think there's this poster child of what immigrant labor looks like. And it's not just the dairymen's, it's not just ag, it's not just the wine growers or restaurant and hotel business, it's not just construction, it's business owners, it's families.
And again, drives up costs.
Drives up costs.
Rates.
So rates is an interesting one. I had the opportunity to meet with Chair Powell last year.
Oh, wow.
And it was just me and about 10 other guys, and we met with 5 of the Board of Governors along with him. And we had this conversation, and really interesting meeting. They were looking at a lot of different, shelter inflation, not just inflation. That inflation target is trying to get around 2 to 3%. Oddly enough, if you take shelter inflation out of that, and this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but we're at the 2 to 3%.
Okay.
The only way in my mind, and I'm not an economist and definitely not the Fed, but the only way in my mind to get shelter inflation down is to add more units. The only way to add more units is to lower rates. Initially, when you lower rates, there's going to be more activity and it's going to raise prices. But I see in the long term, there's the spike, right? The curve, and then I think it levels back out. When rates come down, you will see a flood of homes coming back on the market. You're stuck with a 3% interest rate, not stuck, but you've got a 3% interest rate. No way you're selling your house.
Yeah.
But you start getting rates, and I don't think we'll ever see that again, but you start getting rates in the 5s and the high 4s, and all of a sudden,
it'll move again.
Okay, well, maybe I will sell my house because I've been wanting to.
So you're thinking that there's a lot of pressure to get this down.
There is, and I think that's the tariff thing. I think that's I think all of these things. Trump's no dummy.
Well, we're also we're renegotiating, I think, $9 trillion of U.S. debt at the same time, right?
Correct.
Like,
Plus, we have a tax cliff coming up
Yeah.
that I don't think anybody's willing to talk about. But
Yeah.
that's a $4 to $6 trillion cliff we're coming up just to extend, not increase any tax savings,
Just
but
to extend the
Trump tax cuts.
Oh, Steve, this was.
So-
we need to have you back again.
Yeah,
this went by so fast. Hey, before we kind of, what's your website so I can send people
So
your
it's
way?
Tradewinds of Idaho.
We didn't really talk about your core business.
That's a
Tradewinds
of Idaho.
of Idaho.com. Steve builds unbelievable homes here.
Thank you.
Some of the most
Thank you.
amazing homes that you'll see in Idaho, and you've done it for 20.
So I 06, so 22 or 18 years. Yeah.
As the owner of Tradewinds.
Yeah,
Well, hey,
19 years.
thank you for your leadership in Idaho. You're involved in so many things, and this has been great to
Thanks for having me. I appreciate
it's
it.
a great topic, and so timely for what we need to be thinking about and looking at for the Valley. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.